Boom! Welcome into Sports Bet Betting Insight today. Pauly and Teddy weekend preview edition. Early look at the Western Conference Finals. In the deep dive, big game breakdown, Game 6. Can we get a Game 7 here as the Wizards are at home? Home team 9-0 straight up between the Celtics and Wizards this season. But another trend you may want maybe put you on the Celtics. We'll get to all that coming up. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. There are bad bets. Then there's what happened last night. After the Kawhi Leonard injury was announced, he will not play. The line went up to 9. Before that, a bettor at CG Technology here in Vegas laid $386,000 to win $120,000 on Rockets money line. He was in trouble from the get-go. He got beat by 40. That's got to sting, Teddy.
Well, I would almost rather lose a bet like that than, I don't know, lose a Atlanta Falcons money line bet in the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? He's done. You know what I mean? You're not sweating it. You know you made a bad decision, and that's that. It's not, oh, I had a right side, and they took it away from me. But, you know, this is something that has been a recurring theme on Sportsbet all year. You know, it was a bad bet from -6.5. And the total, significant move too. Obviously, 214.5 down to 210.5, but -6.5 up to -9. And offshores, mostly 8.5. The Nevada properties, mostly on 9. And it wasn't all an adjustment once Kawhi went down. Bettors came in, they laid -8, they laid -8.5 with the Rockets. But obviously, when the superstar goes down, everybody else steps up. When the superstar sits out a game, the opposing team tends to let down. We saw both of those in spades last night in the Rockets. What do we call it? I mean, they just got beaten down.
Yeah, they didn't show up. That was one of the strangest no-shows I've seen in a long time watching sports. Well, I'd give them a good chance to win Game 7 on the road. Harden didn't pull the Kobe Bryant, didn't shoot for the first quarter, didn't shoot for most of the game. That was strange. ESPN Stats and Info, Popovich, 20 playoff wins against D'Antoni, tied for the most ever versus one coach versus another. Phil Jackson's got 20 against Jerry Sloan. Spurs beat him every way possible, killed him on the boards, and Harden went 18 floor minutes without scoring from the final minute of Game 5 to the second quarter of Game 6. 0 for 4 with 8 turnovers. Maybe Bill Simmons is on to something. He thought he had a concussion at the end of Game 5. Who knows? He wasn't himself. Rockets 9 of 37 on 2-point shot attempts. Almost impossible to do. You'll see the sickest beats in Major League Baseball. The bullpen melts every night. Here's another one. Padres on the run line. They led 2-0 in the 8th. They led 2-1 in the 9th, and then their bullpen blew it up. A walk-off, and the Rangers cover the run line, Teddy.
One last thing on Rockets Spurs. And this is one where we got to give ourselves a pat on the back. What did we say? Jonathan Simmons, watch out for this guy. What did he do? 18 points, 4 assists, and 31 minutes of floor time. The Spurs plus 32 with him on the court. Heck of a game plan from Coach Popovich. We'll talk more about him in the deep dive. Then you start talking about MLB and the beats that you start to taking. Of course, Brandon Marr had nothing in the 9th inning. He had nothing at all. Allowed 3 of the first 4 batters to reach base. Then the Napoli 3-run blast to win it. And, of course, Mike Napoli, we called him out as being one of the biggest disappointments in Major League Baseball in early season play. He can't enter the game hitting 160. That's a brutal beat, but that's the nature of MLB when it comes to bullpen meltdowns.
Bad bet. Don't 20-cent move on the Dodgers on the road in Coors. Why were they in a hurry to bet on Ryu? 12 of the 24 batters reached, or 14 of the 28 batters got a hit or a walk.
Why were they in a hurry? I think it was less about betting against Ryu as it was to look to bet against Colorado after the pitching change. You know, we saw Anderson get scratched. Hoffman came in, and bettors not excited about watching him. But yeah, you're talking about a guy that hadn't worked in 2 weeks, and he wasn't good. What do you give up? 10 runs, 5 earned, over 4 innings pitched. He was ugly, and the Rockies got the money. Those were bad bets on the LA Dodgers.
Bad for the books. 15-cent move on the Red Sox, and the under bet down from 9 to 8.5 in Milwaukee. They got the win, and Kimbrel lights out again. 18 of the 20 pitches were in the strike zone. ESPN Stats and Info. Last 13 batters faced, 12 strikeouts, and an infield single. How about that?
That, sir, is a pretty good-looking track record over his last 13 batters. no question about it. And I mean, the money showed on Boston. Tames was out for the Brewers, so was Braun. But even with those two guys out, it was 1-1 into the ninth. And then Mookie Betts broke it open with a 3-run bomb off Pauly Feliz.
And one more, 20-cent move on the Blue Jays. They won 7-2.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to see this weak Toronto lineup showing signs of life. And despite, Bautista's got a .276 slugging percentage right now, that ain't going to cut it. Remember, they get Tulo back, they'll get Donaldson back, they'll get Russell Martin back. The Blue Jays took a bunch of money. They're playing their best ball of this year right now, by far. And Blue Jays beat up in the books with that 7-2 victory.
Up next, big game breakdown. Game 6 ESPN from D.C. Can the Wizards force a Game 7? Will a road team finally win this year in this matchup on SportsBit? Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Go to SBROdds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on SportsBit, Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy. Time for a big game breakdown. As always, get up to SBR Odds and Sportsbook Review. Check out the rating guide. Make sure you're betting with a trustworthy shop. Game 6 tonight, ESPN. 5 o'clock Pacific, Celtics and the Wizards. Home team, 9-0 straight up in this matchup. But the home teams trying to avoid elimination in the playoffs, 0-10 this postseason. Wizards 5, 216 the total. Game 1, 123, 111. Boston, Game 2, Celtics 1, 129, 119 in overtime. Washington 116 89 in Game 3, 121, 102 in Game 4, and 123 to 101 in Game 5. The Celtics had big offensive numbers in Game 4. They did it with defense early. Held the Wizards at 34% shooting in the first quarter. Got out fast, started to run. Transition points. Bradley shot the ball well, and fast break points were 15-0 Boston in the quarter. 3 layups and dunks, but also the 3-pointers too. And John Wall couldn't finish early. What'd you think of the run out? It caused for concern because I think Isaiah Thomas only had 5 points in the first half, and the Celtics still had a ton of points in a big lead, Teddy.
Well, yeah, and this is now 3 games in a row where the Celtics have effectively defended one of the tougher point guards in the NBA to defend. I mean, John Wall couldn't finish. 5 of 14 on 2-point shots, only 4 assists. Now, the 4 assists had more to do with his teammates missing shots in a series where basically any team that's been missing shots in the first quarter has been out of it. We've had 1 competitive game out of the 4. But you say, what do I think of what we just saw? I saw something that Boston did in Game 5 they hadn't done all series. They really hadn't done all playoffs. The interior defense was there for the Celtics. They had 8 blocked shots in that ball game. And you look at the impact. Both teams made 23 shots in the paint. Both teams scored 46 points on those shots in the paint. But the Celtics did it on 12 fewer shots. They were 23 of 38 in the paint, whereas Washington 23 of 50 sub 500 shooting from close range. So that certainly gives you an idea of the impact that Boston's interior defense had, and that's defense that they're going to need to bring again tonight if they're going to close out this series in D.C.
All right, Scotty Brooks, when you give a good team transition points and breakaway points with nobody guarding you, going to be hard to keep up with them. We had no answer for those guys. We've done a pretty good job on their best player. Not a good enough job on those guys, end quote. Avery Bradley got many of those on fast break points. 25 points in the first half, 29 for the game. Brad Stevens, quote, I had no idea he had 25 at the half. I had no idea Isaiah had only 1 field goal until I looked at the stat sheet. We were making the right place. That's really all you're looking for. Thomas, 13 field goal attempts, but 9 assists. I guess that's how I've got to play. As a basketball player, you've got to read what the defense is giving you. I was trying to do whatever I could to win tonight, really, knowing they were getting a lot of pressure on me and putting 2-3 guys on me at all times. And there it is again, Teddy. The Washington Wizards bench, we're beating this to death, but it's worth repeating. They stink. Brooks, there's nothing he can do. Wall and Beal running out of gas as soon as Wall comes out. So as soon as he puts these, it's the same 3-4 guys. As soon as he puts Jennings, Oubre, and Bogdanovich out there, all hell breaks loose. Look at these numbers again.
Well, and I really thought that Mahinmi might be a difference maker for them. He got hurt just before the playoffs started. He's someone who was in Scott Brooks' regular rotation. He's another big body. They can give Marcin Gortat his regular rest. And with him and Smith, there was actually some flexibility. They could go large with a pair of 7-footers on the floor at any given time. Or they could have none of them on the floor and play a small ball lineup. However, Mahinmi hasn't been any better than the rest of that Wizards bench, and it's game in, game out. We talked about it from game one. It has not changed. The Celtics supporting cast has been the difference. That's why Boston's up 3-2 in this series. And when it comes to those quotes from Brad Stevens and Isaiah Thomas, I mean, Isaiah, oh, I guess that's how I've got to play. Well, when you're getting double teamed, you know, it's okay to only have 13 field goal attempts. You know, when you're winning the game in blowout fashion, when you're up 20 after one, you got to be comfortable and confident with that. And I think he is. And Isaiah, of course, when it comes to fourth quarter crunch time minutes, if we saw a competitive game in this series, he's someone you might have a level of confidence that would be able to put some of those shots in the basket, given a tight game in the fourth quarter. He's done it all year.
All right, we'll get back to this game and play of the days. We look to stay red hot. Game 2, live odds, Sportsbook Review and SBR odds, Mets and the Brewers. Here's Harvey. He's back. Harvey against Garza, $1.10, 9 the total. I mean, apparently, Harvey got pissed off that his former girl, Adriana Lima, was out with Julian Edelman. Stu Gatz from the Dan Le Batard show had a good quote that the Patriots beat the Jets, and now they beat the Mets. Edelman was out with Lima. Harvey got pissed, went on a bender, played golf on Saturday. Apparently got a headache. Communication was an issue. Didn't make it to the ballpark, so they suspended him. He came in, I'm sorry, I apologize. Reyes ripped him, other players not happy. The one thing he did not apologize for, having an ERA of 5 and change over 6 starts with a career low K percentage and a career high in base on balls percentage. Not good now. Teddy, 10 days between starts. He wasn't good to begin with.
So, you know, we talk about the situation all the time. Athletes, they're human beings. Sports bettors, we're human beings. Sometimes you have a bad day. Sometimes you have a bad week. Sometimes something happens off the field that's going to affect your life. So here's the skinny. He's still apparently got the hots for his ex-girlfriend or his girlfriend or whatever it is. And now she's going out with somebody else. And he goes on a bender. Pauly, you been there? I've been there. You know, I imagine most of the people watching the show at some point in their life have been there. But we're not living in the New York media spotlight. And when you go on a bender because your girl is going out with somebody else, all of a sudden now it's like national news and a huge story and all of that. And, of course, you know, here's a quote. Obviously, I'm extremely embarrassed by my actions. I apologize to my teammates, to the Mets organization, to the Wilpons, all the way down to Mets fans for doing what I did. Yes, I was out Friday night past curfew. I did play golf Saturday morning, and I put myself in a bad place to be ready for showing up for a ball game, and that is my responsibility. I take full blame for that. I'm doing everything in my power so that never happens again. That's a good quote, Pauly. That's what he's supposed to say. It's a sign of maturity. It's accepting responsibility for being human, which is something that we all are. But, you know, you talk about a pitcher that has issues.
Well, it's almost like you're excusing his behavior. What he did was ridiculous.
Yes, I'm excusing his behavior. Of course I'm excusing his behavior.
It's ridiculous what he did. He's done it before.
Have you ever done something like that?
Guys worth $20 million. You can't go out and get another girl? Show up to work. Unbelievable.
Yes or no? Have you ever had a situation with your girl that affected you in some other way?
I'm not making $20 million a year. It's not even the same thing.
I'm absolutely comparing. Let alone when this is a guy in his early 20s, okay? We're not talking about a 50-year-old man that doesn't have it together. It's a guy who hasn't been in this situation 100 times before in his life. I'm absolutely excusing him. No question. We're all human, Pauly, every one of us. Even Matt Harvey, even with his career-low strikeout percentage, even with his career-high walk percentage. But, you know, his velocity's back to where it used to be. His command isn't. And, of course, the rest of the Mets are a complete mess right now. Look at all the guys on the DL, Pauly.
Thor, Cespedes, Duda, Wright, Matz, Familia added the DL too. That's the last thing they needed. And Garza, not bad. Showing some decent stuff. 1-0 with a 2.55 through 3 starts so far. You see the strikeout percentage. It would be his best since 2003. Base on ball percentage would be a career best as well. Maybe he doesn't have the stamina to hold up through the full season. But over 1,600 career innings pitched, he can outthink some hitters too. What do you think? Do you think they'll, I don't know, rally around and rise up to get a big effort out of Harvey? Or would you like to fade him because he hasn't pitched in 10 days?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, the Brewers have hit the ball all year. And, you know, we saw Braun and Eric Thames sit out yesterday. So I think it's going to be tough if Thames plays today. Certainly, you look at his numbers. I mean, you know, number 1 in baseball in home runs, number 4 in OPS, number 3 in slugging percentage, number 8 in on base, number 15 in batting average. We're talking about an impact offensive player. And I don't know that Harvey wants to challenge him with fastballs. He's going to have to get his breaking ball command in order if he's going to have success in Milwaukee tonight.
Up next, the deep dive. Really look at the Western Conference Finals. You won't believe the series price and what the send-out was in one offshore book. Plus the play of the day on SportsBit. Betting insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Wrapping up on SportsBit, Betting Insight today. Western Conference Finals starts Sunday afternoon. Game 1, Golden State 10, 211 the total. Chris opened series price, Golden State minus 2,500, plus 1175 take back. Quick action down to $12, plus 750. 5 dimes opened 1,000. And in Las Vegas, at the Westgate here, Jeff Sherman and the crew opened minus 1,600 on Golden State to win the series price. Spurs in the conference finals for the 10th time in the last 20 years. And Mike Brown, Spurs assistant in the early 2000s, Teddy. It's Pop against Brown.
All right, let's talk about the openers because we've seen some very interesting line movement here. All right, now, when Chris opened, bookmaker, whatever you want to call him, their opening is Golden State 25-1 to win the series. You got to lay 25. That line's now in half. And that's just at bookmaker. You said 5 dimes. 5 dimes actually opened after Chris had already taken a bunch of Spurs money to win the series at the big plus prices. They opened minus 1250. Shoot. In an hour, minus 900. The plus 800 down to plus 600. And then Westgate opened in Vegas, and they're like, yeah, we don't care what's going on offshore. They opened Golden State minus 1,600 with the Spurs plus 900, and already they, too, have seen some early money on San Antonio for the series. Normally, when you see a team getting steamed for this series, you're going to see some type of a corresponding line move for Game 1. Because if you're making a big bet before the series starts, it makes no sense to do so on whatever team unless you think that team's going to win Game 1. But here's Golden State minus 10 in Game 1, and it took a little bit of money. We saw minus 115 on that minus 10, a little bit of extra juice you had to lay with the Warriors. So the markets think Golden State's going to win Game 1, and yet the markets think the Spurs are liver than the first look might think when it comes to winning the series. So to me, that's a head scratcher. You're not supposed to see the heavy San Antonio money until after they lose Game 1 if you're not seeing the corresponding Game 1 money to go along with it. Does that make sense, Pauly?
Yeah, what do you think of Brown against Pop now?
Well, I mean, Brown, he coached the Cavs when they were swept by the Spurs into the 2007 finals. He was a much younger coach at that stage of his career. He is someone who knows Pops, 3 rings. 3 rings? No, I think it's 2 rings with San Antonio. And, of course, he coached here in Vegas with the Summer League teams for the San Antonio Spurs. But if you're making a line on Pops versus Brown, yeah, Pops is going to have a pretty big edge. We just saw him coach circles around Mike D'Antoni when it came to player rotations. And I know that with Mike Brown, you're not happy with some of the stuff he's done in adjusting the Warriors' player rotations.
Mike Brown's a bad coach. Now, I know a great system's in place. I think they'll start to miss Kerr if he's not there for the finals. Big time Joe Fortenbaugh tweet May 8th. Golden State, this is before Game 4 against the Jazz. +9 differential first quarter. +2.5 third quarter. +4.7 in the fourth. They've been outscored by almost 4 points in the second quarter in the playoffs. In the second quarter of Game 4, the Jazz outscored them 35-21. Let's be honest, he puts a shitty lineup out there in the second quarter with Ian Clark, Green, Thompson, Iguodala, and West. Only one guy can shoot out of that group, and it is inexcusable and Mickey Mouse in high school to sit Durant and Curry at the same time. We'll see what adjustments he makes in this series, if any. but big edge to pop there, and maybe they get a game. I'll give them a game, maybe. Warriors in 5.
Well, so, I mean, you're saying all this where you don't like Brown, and yet here's Golden State as a team that has won all 8 of their playoff games. You know, they haven't been a great point spread team, not as home chalk necessarily, unable to cover some of these double-digit numbers, but they've certainly been good on the highway, and they haven't lost a game yet. Now, they haven't been tested. Portland, had nothing in the interior, and that's obviously a problem against the Warriors. And Utah, for as much as they had, the Jazz didn't have the playoff savvy. They haven't been there before. San Antonio has. And the other thing with the Spurs, you have to wonder if they can get enough offense from players other than Kawhi Leonard. I would expect the Warriors to go small early. They're likely to have Andre Iguodala getting ample time on Kawhi Leonard defensively. And they're also going to force the Spurs 4s to have to guard Durant on the three-point line. Those are not good matchups for San Antonio. But to say 5, I'm not a Spurs believer. And yet, I think the Warriors get tested maybe a little bit more than that in this series. I'll say in 6.
All right. The last time they played was in late March. No Durant. Curry and Thompson went off. They blew them out on the road, and they were down 16 early in that game before they ran out San Antonio in the second half. Money time, play of the day. Let's keep it going. I think we're going for 7 in a row here, 7 or 8. We'll call it 7. Betting number 712. We're going against one trend and sticking with another. This season, Boston and Washington, the home team is 9-0 straight up. Let's make it 10-0. Lay the 5 with the Wizards. We'll think they'll cover the number as well. They need a Game 7 in the NBA. Second shooter on a grassy knoll. Let's play that angle. Even though it's 0-10 teams in the playoffs, home team when facing elimination. Wizards send it back to Beantown for Monday night. Fun week back next week. A lot to go over. We'll look at Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals. Maybe a Game 7 as well. And Tuesday, one of the biggest moments for the Lakers. Can they get in the top 3 in the lottery or lose the pick? The Sixers get the number 1 pick and the number 4 pick. Talk to you then on SportsBet. Betting Insight today at SBRPicks.com.